Welcome back. Mr. Gajendra, if I may continue from where Mr. Vithanage left off, but I'd like to ask you a related question first. Now, in explaining how this VAT will apply to the traders, it was said that this will have a cascading effect on the retail and wholesale trade. Now, he said that what happens usually is that an importer brings the goods into the country, then that is sold to a PETA merchant. Then the PETA merchant in turn sells it to a van or a lorry that does the rounds. Then the lorry delivers that to the retail outlets all over the country. Then at each stage, there is this 15% applied. Now, at each stage, a deduction is made. You know, for the VAT that he has paid, the importer pays the VAT, then the next man, deducts that part that was paid, and he pays VAT only for his profit. But when that whole thing comes down the line, changes hands 3 or 4 times, and then it comes right down to the consumer, that due to the effect of passing on the VAT to the next level, that the consumer will end up paying not 15%, but more than that, 17 to 20 or even more than that, 17 to 20% ultimately. How would you sort of agree with that as a tax consultant? I mean, the way basically, I know that you wouldn't be sort of dealing with the traders at that level, but is that
no, basically
a possibility?
VAT is an indirect tax. When it is an indirect tax, the impact is on the trader, the incidence is on the consumer, in theory, right? That the consumer bears the tax. So, if the final product sale is 100, consumer will pay 15%. But sometimes, depending on the demand and supply, he may not bear, the trader might bear some of the cost. Now, the way it was proposed initially, it had a cascading effect for the wholesale and retail, because there are some wholesalers, retailers, they buy from unregistered people, who are not paying VAT. Then there is a cascading effect is there. Cascading is you pay tax on a tax. But if the input system works properly the way it been pronounced, there can't be a cascading effect. Now, for example, if you buy at 80, the original cost is 80, it's 15%, right? 12. Then it goes down the line and comes to 100. So 100 will be 15. So 15 minus 12 is the amount that you will pay in that production and distribution channel. So if the VAT is implemented properly with the input credit, there can't be a cascading effect to that extent. There may be some cost there VAT is included, you may not have. That is the reason why the government has now said there will be an input, deemed input. Even if you don't pay input tax, they will give you an input tax for newly registered traders. So that means, earlier in my example, for 3 million, if you had to pay 450,000 immediately, and then next leg also 450. So no, you will get only a margin, whether you have paid buy from a registered person or you are imported or buying from an unregistered person, you will pay on the margin, right? So
that is exactly where the issue has arisen, because now when you pay VAT from your margin, now you are supposed to pass that on to the next level. You are not supposed to pay, the trader is not supposed to pay the VAT out of his own pocket, then it becomes an income tax.
But so if you import at 80, finally it passes and ends the consumer at 100, consumer pay 15% on 100.
I think there is a cumulative effect. It's not going to be effective rate is going to be more than 50%. Let me tell you why. Let's say you're paying 100 rupees, buying something 100 rupees worth of as a trader, and then you try to keep a markup, right? But you as a trader, you have your other expenses as well. They are also coming under tax. So you have to keep a certain kind of profit margin as well, right? So what happens is when you have your cost escalating, your profit margin is going to squeeze as well. So which means you are trying to what you got for 100 rupees, which you have sort of sold to the next guy for 10 rupees, extra 10, so it's at 110 rupees. Now you have to have 115 rupees, you know, and 15 rupees is the value addition, and that value addition have a tax on that, right? So that means there is always an additional element coming with every value addition as well.
Passes down the line.
Yeah,
so it passes down the line.
That is intended. That's what I said. That has to happen. No,
no. But the point is this. But that basically, at the end of the day, the consumer, what he bears is not 15%, not 15%. It is more than that. This is the point.
No, really, the value-added tax is in theory. This is profits plus remuneration. End of the day, because if you get all your purchases in procurement, if you get input tax, what you pay will be on the, because on the remuneration there is no VAT, and your profit there is no VAT. Yes. If all other procurement is subject to VAT, you will end up paying on your profit and your remuneration, what you pay the people. So yes, there are inadequacies in the implementation. In effect, you might not have 50. That is true. That is true. That is because not the VAT scheme itself, but in the way it is implemented.
Yeah, and also could it be due to the structure of our trade that there are so many intermediaries?
Yeah, no, that you can't stop the trade. No.
Yeah, you can't help it.
Stop when there is an intermediary, even without VAT, the price will go up. No,
that's right.
That's what saying. Sometimes if you buy goods at PETA and buy from your down the line somewhere in Bambalapiti or something, you know, this thing, there is a big price variation. That is because the intermediary is making the money, right? Yeah. So the end of the day, the consumer will have to pay VAT on the final price, right? Yeah. And it depends also sometimes. Now when it happens,
yeah, because a lot of traders are sort of determined that they shouldn't be paying the VAT. It's the consumer who is supposed to pay the VAT. And in fact, they were telling me that at discussions they held with the tax authorities, the tax authority was telling them that you're not supposed to pay this tax. It's supposed to be paid by the consumer. So therefore, why are you complaining? You just pass it on. So when they try to pass it on,
you can't pass it on also sometimes, because that again demand and supply.
Yes,
the price.
Pass it on the full thing.
Sometimes you may not.
Where you bring the economic side of it. If the economy is going well, nobody talks about the VAT. If the economy has been doing well, people don't care.
This problem cannot be solved by looking at VAT. The problem is 80% of the revenue is coming from the country's revenue is coming from indirect taxes. Only 20% from direct tax. Direct tax is progressive tax, capacity to pay. Any tax should follow the principle of capacity to pay. Indirect tax doesn't have the principle of capacity to pay, because it has a regressive element.
Precisely the
regressive element. There is a regressive element. You know, your marginal propensity to consume is affected by this indirect tax. So that is the reason why where essential items are exempted from VAT. Free of some essential items are exempted from.
I think
so the 80-20 mix, the government and the Prime Minister, I think the policy statement say by 2020 we have to get 60% income tax from direct tax and 40% from indirect tax. Then the social imbalance, excessive focus on indirect tax will bring social imbalance and macroeconomic instability. So that the mix of our revenue, these taxes are necessary for essential prerequisites of the government, other than of the people. You know, you need free education, you have free health, so many subsidies are there, so you need money. So you have to change this combination of 80% indirect tax, 20% direct tax to 60% direct tax. It's not going to be easy. And for 40% indirect tax. You know, at least this 80-20 is too convoluted. And it's too, and then what is happening is more impact, more focus, more revenue is collected from masses than on the principle of capacity to pay. Direct tax is a progressive form of tax, which is on the principle of capacity to pay.
I need to add a point here. I think economically speaking, now it's 80%, 20%. This is the crisis Sri Lanka faced with. You know, this has been happening from 1990 onwards. We have been shifting towards from the first time what we did was, you know, when we sort of have been reducing the import taxes. You know, that was our main revenue source, and it should have been replaced by direct taxes like corporate taxes, but that didn't happen. So comes the value added, the indirect taxes. So from the, if you look at the indirect taxes, the combination of indirect taxes options we have, value added is a better tax than the other taxes which are having cascading effects and all that. It's getting, the burden is getting more and more as you go down the ladder. So technically speaking, value added is a better guide, but the issue is not that. The issue is why the taxes are necessary in the first place, because the government expenditure. The government has commit to certain expenditures. Now these expenditures, some are essential expenditures, some are development expenditures, some are expenditure that are must, if for example infrastructure. Then there are expenditures which you just do as if that it's a credit card you're holding. And if you engage in such indulgence, you end up with a situation where you are running short of cash. Now, why do we go to VAT again? Why do we go to VAT again is because that's the surest way of collecting cash in the short term. I mean, if you are trying to work towards corporate taxes and everything, that will take a lot of time to organize because the institutional structure is not there. Whereas VAT, you can simply land VAT and start collecting it in the very short term. So I think it's the way you have been dealing with this.
Yeah, indirect taxes, sales taxes is easier to
it's a quick
fix, and VAT tax, VAT is earlier turnover tax. It was a Tundu system. Turnover means you have to see what is your turnover and pay.
Yeah.
So, but that has a cascading effect. It's easy to collect as long as you read the trader, and as long as you find out the trader's revenue, is easy to collect. Income tax is more complex. That's in that sense that you can't avoid it because you are taxing profits. It's on the bottom line, profits. Here it's on the sales. Establishing the sales is easier than establishing. But VAT is, to collection point of view, turnover tax is easier to collect than VAT, because VAT also you have this trail and the input taxes, you have to, documentation has to go. So out of the indirect taxes, tried and tested tax world over is value added tax, because the cascading effect is either totally eliminated or substantially eliminated. Very difficult to eliminate totally, but there can be substantially eliminated.
Yeah, in this case, in Sri Lanka's case, what they are saying is that the structure of the trade may bring about a unpleasant cascading effect where where the consumer will ultimately have to pay more than.
So that is where this consumer protection authorities and all should come forward. Why now? When this tax went by, generally say from 11 to 5%, people increase it by 10%, 20%, right? So no one checking on it. And if you speak to the normal folks,
Mr. Vidara, now if you have a tax, all right, which goes from the importer pays it, then the PETA merchant uses that as an input tax, then he adds something to it, then it goes down to the van or the lorry, and again he adds something to it. How do you stop that? I mean, what do you do?
ඒක තමයි දැන් මේ ඇතුළත තියෙන තත්ත්වය. මේක වළක්වා ගැනීම ක්‍රමවේදයක් තමයි දැන් අපි හොයන්න ඕන. අපි හිතන විදිහට දැන් අපි ගමු එක ස්ථානයක්. දැන් එතකොට
You're following that.
දවසකට 1,38,000කට වැඩි ආදායමක් ලබන කට්ටිය වැට් වලට රෙජිස්ටර් වෙන්න ඕන. හැබැයි ඊට අපි කිව්ව අපි ඇගලුම් මේ බෙලන්සල් දෙකක් ගත්තා. මෙතන එකක් තියෙනවා මෙතන එකක් තියෙනවා. එතකොට මේ කියන එක 1,38,000ට වැඩි. එතකොට එයා වැට් රෙජිස්ටර් වෙලා තියෙනවා. එතකොට එයා රුපියල් 100කට එයා මාජින් එකක් 100ට රුපියල් 20ක් තියලා එයාගේ ලාභේ එයා තව වැට් එකත් එක්ක එයා ඒක විකුණනවා. එතකොට ඔය කියන එක රුපියල් 1000ක් නම් 1200 1350කට ඒක අලුම වෙනවා. හැබැයි 1,38,000ට අඩු ඇඳුම් කඩයක් තියෙනවා කියලා කියමුකෝ. හැබැයි එයා ඒක විකුණන්නේ කීයටද? එයා විකුණන්නේ ඒ ගානටම. ඉතින් එතකොට පාරිභෝගික විදිහට මොකද්ද අපිට තියෙන සාධාරණ එයා 135ක ලාභයක් දියන් තමයි එයා විකුණන්නේ. ඉතින් එතකොට එයා ඒක ටර්නෝවර් එක එයා වැඩි කරගන්න කැමති නැහැ. නැත්නම් එයාට පුළුවන් ඒක තව ටිකක් අඩු කරලා විකුණන්න. ඒක විකුණන ගමන් මොකද එයාට වෙන්නේ? එයාත් අර 1,38,000කට වැටෙනවා. ඒ හින්දා එයා කවදාවත් ඒක කරන්නේ නැහැ. ඒ හින්දා ඔබ කියන ආකාරයට මේක හැම පැත්තෙම පාරිභෝගිකයා ගසා කෑමේ ක්‍රමවේදයක් තමයි. එතකොට පාරිභෝගික අධිකාරිය කවදාවත් මේකට මැදිහත් වෙන්නේ නැහැ. එහෙම
ඇයි බැරි?
අත්‍යවශ්‍ය භාණ්ඩ විතර ගැන උන් බලන්නේ. අලලූණු පරිප්පු සීනි ඒව තමයි පාලන මිලක්. ඒ control ලංකා
What
control.
is it that the Consumer Affairs Authority will concentrate only on the essential only on essential items.
පාලන මිලක්
And
තියෙන
not on
බාණ්ඩවල
the-
විතරයි.
No, what he's saying is you know, if a person is liable for VAT and
Yeah.
another guy not liable for VAT, the guy who is not liable for VAT will have an undue advantage.
Yes.
Something like that. No?
Yes.
Yes.
In fact, that's a question that I want to ask.
Yes.
You know, I'll just phrase that question. I mean,
But I have a different. Okay.
yeah. Now it's like this: the question of exempting some retail establishments, but imposing VAT on others. The limit of 50 million a year, or 138,000
A day.
per day. Now that is according to the new draft law that is
Yeah.
before that is going to be presented to Parliament. Now the question is, if it is 138, if the limit is 138, what about those shops that would be in the borderline?
Yeah.
Now, if it is 140, they'll have to pay 140,000 bucks a day.
Yeah.
Means they'll have to pay the VAT.
Yeah.
But if they are just below 138,000 a day, they don't have to pay the VAT. So won't there be some temptation in most of these people to either scale down their operations or to do something to escape getting into this VAT net at all? Because I'll give you just one example, which a trader, a businessman, who he told me that he practices. Now, he still maintains his first shop that he ever opened in his lifetime. I mean, that is for sentimental reasons. He's just running that a skeleton operation with 2 employees, a 500 square foot shop. And he says that he has instructed his employees, the moment you get to 33,000, per the day's collection goes up to 33,000,
Now
close the shop and go home.
Now 130,000.
Yeah, that is to escape NBT. And NBT is only 2%.
Yeah, 1% for a trading level.
Yes, right. He just wants to escape the NBT. What he says is that by saving on NBT, that little operation there, he can increase the profit by about 20,000, 15,000, 20,000 a month.
Yeah.
So if his normal profit margin is say 40,000, by avoiding having to pay NBT, he can increase that by another 15,000 to 20,000 without any extra effort at all. And he says in addition to that, he is saving on overtime, he is saving on electricity and all these other charges that go with keeping that place open. So now, when people engage in that kind of thing just to avoid a 1% or 2% NBT, I mean, the probability of them doing that to escape 15%, a 15% charge would be that much greater, wouldn't it?
What you're talking, sir, is about the evasion.
Yeah,
People
evasion or avoidance, no?
Avoidance is a legitimate one. Avoidance, yeah, it's like this.
Avoidance.
If I don't, tomorrow, if I don't want to pay transport tax, I can walk. Here now, if he says, look, I'm not going to, if I don't want to pay this, I will be small and remain small. That is his choice. He can be a choice, But people who go beyond that net amount and then don't pay, they are avoiding. Evasion is you avoid payment without avoiding your liability.
Yes.
Avoidance is you avoid the liability and by that consequently avoid payment. So evasion is a criminal element.
Yes.
That. So, but what is that is where that is the job of the revenue administration. And with this new revenue administration management information system that is coming in, and the way it has been pronounced, and if it is going to be implemented and linked, with 23 institutions, this informal sector, what you are saying, the informal sector which is eroding lot of legitimate revenue due to the state, will die sooner than later. The RAMIS, whether it is becoming the panacea for all ill, the past computerization, technology implementation has not gone the way it should have been.
Yes.
Hopefully, if RAMIS goes the way it has been pronounced, the informal sector, because they are going to be linked, informal sector will have to die sooner than later. And with technology coming in, because now, the other day I lost something on my iPhone cloud, I deleted by mistake. But they went to the cloud and got it back. So those days, if you are not going to, you will, some fellow will lift the file or anything. Now you can't, even if you do, the technology will have the information.
That's right.
So that will be the answer. True, there are people evading it, that they will do, and if they can survive. And why do they do? Because of the immunity and impunity that prevails in this country. If there is a probability of you getting caught for an offense is low, sort of an immunity.
Yeah.
And even if you got caught, if there is a probability of getting punished is also low, impunity. So the immunity and the impunity is very low, the person will break the law. So our, informal immunity and informal impunities which have been given has to go away and come back to a situation where it will be deterrent for people to evade taxes. And that is one of the factors.
I have a different take on this. Can I?
Yeah. We'll just go for a short break, and we will continue the discussion immediately after that.